We're live. We're live. Hello, everyone. I can't see you either, Kiva, but soon we'll all see each other. I'd like to thank everyone for showing up tonight. We're on steps 8 and 9 of the 12 steps. We'll do a quick review, and we have a special guest tonight, all the way from Philadelphia, Bucktown, PA. And if you want to get down on the ground, Joe Kane. Joe Kane, everyone. I could hear the roar, Joe, through a lot of hand clapping chats, emojis. Joe's so kind to be with us this evening, and he's going to speak to his experience with steps 8 and 9. And just to give you a little background, Joe and I know each other. We have a sponsor in common, a dear friend that showed us how to work the steps pretty much the same way years ago. And us being here is a tribute to that man, because Joe and I grew up in a town that didn't really embrace the steps in a traditional way that you would see that is common today in the area we grew up in. The fellowship was really strong, but there was no real form to how two members of a recovery community would take each other through the steps. And this man came at the time. He's from New York. He moved to our area. He was a prominent architect who was sober 40 years and started taking people through the book at that term. And you'd meet him once a week. And you would go through the text of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he showed us how to work the steps. And that was kind of foreign back then. And it really changed the footprint and landscape of our recovery community for the next 3 decades. And Joe and I are here as a result of his efforts. I know I am. The man changed my life and saved me, even if after a relapse. I knew men like him were sober and I could relate to them. And I knew he would listen and understand me. And I owe that debt to him. And so that's Joe and I. That's how Joe and I got to know each other and understand what recovery was in the same way that was comfortable for us. So quick review. Up to this point, we did the first 7 steps. And what we did was admit to fatal and progressive disease into the order and complexity you wanted to understand it. Would be kind of the water you would carry and understanding the science of it that could maybe nourish your intellectual curiosity. What is wrong? Why is my brain and my cognitive skills compromised? But in the terms of desperation and getting sober right away, I'm just coming to this understanding none of my plans have worked. This transition to steps 1 and 2. And I'm coming to believe my brain's compromised, so maybe I can't come up with my own solution. I have this mental blank spot. I'm starting to share this idea if I'm in NA, AA, refuge recovery, that an obsession is so powerful that my intellect's not going to defeat it. I need help. And I transition into step 2. For some of you, it starts to explore the idea, do I want to return to a faith? Do I want to believe in God? If you're atheist or agnostic, just the exploration, am I willing to read more about maybe even consciousness and take this step and trust the guy that's trying to help me? And maybe I've made a friend by now by going to meetings or joining a community. Step 3 is kind of an oath where you can take that pledge and commit to that idea with another person or by yourself. And you're starting to switch your language. You're not worried about use. I'm starting to identify things deeper than use. I realize my addiction's a prior condition. Yeah, I haven't used in 60, 90 days. But is that the problem? And I could start to share this language, at least in AA or NA, that it's resentment, it's fear, it's selfishness, it's this dishonesty. If I could put my energy onto seeing them as the problem, I'm putting the gate back for a relapse. I'm not worried about use. This is the prior condition to me wanting to use this stuff in my mind. So if I commit to that idea, I confront the idea of selfishness and take this pledge. And then I continue right away into the 4th step. And I can start to write this script of my life that writes out as resentments, my basic fears, my fears attached to the resentments. We went over that. Maybe I have a harms list, people I'm not necessarily angry at or sore, but I hurt them. And maybe some of them don't know I hurt them. I confront that. We saw ways you could write the 4th step simply, broadly, or one at a time if you're a chronic relapser, which helped me. That's to the comfort of how you find a sponsor. And we said, finding a sponsor, maybe you don't ask, can you be my sponsor? Maybe you ask, did you work the steps? Can you help me get through them? And that kind of balances the power, and that person will be helpful to you. You do a 5th step, and we talked about you have this script. At least we could talk in this language. I could tell my whole story to someone. And we talked about if there's trauma involved, emotional or violence, that you might want to seek out a licensed therapist or the security of that. If you're Catholic, you would feel the comfort and privacy with a priest. So you have all these options. It's just not carved out of stone, this path, but these are the steps we take. 6th step introduced us to an hour of meditation, basically. It's introducing us to this discipline we might be able to keep through our whole lives. And we do it in the context of looking at, what did we just do? these first 5 steps. Did I leave anything out? Was I not comfortable with my sponsor about maybe my sexual inventory? Should I talk to someone else? 6th step gives you that window of opportunity to correct if you hedged your bets, you're more comfortable. It doesn't mean you'll drink. It means you just got to approach it with a new plan or a different person, or go back and tell your sponsor something. Step 7's this admittance, this position that you want to offer these character defects. It's not that they disappear. You want to focus that the past ones will not affect your future. You'll have resentments and fears again, but do they have to come from this source? Can I put this fire out? Can I be free of it? So that's where we left off. And we're at step 8. And if you reference it, at least in context to Alcoholics Anonymous, you see that they're referencing it's a cheat. You really have it complete. They're saying we go back to our list. It's kind of tricked us into the idea of forgiveness. Our resentments might be the bulk of our amends. And the 8 steps of redundancy. Do I have to add someone? Maybe I forgot. Another chance at double checking things. Step 8 also gives us this opportunity to make a plan. Maybe with a sponsor. Maybe with, a credit recovery, a lawyer, to start making a plan. How am I going to put these fires out? And some of it might involve professional help. Maybe I could start with the easiest first and get a momentum. Maybe so we're going to look at a couple of those things, and then Joe's going to share. There's some great advice, and that's universal, not just to AA and not just to NA. NA suggests you always get professional help at this point in the Narcotics Anonymous book. But AA has 3 steps you kind of follow. And they're the only things I want to point out really tonight. If you follow these 3 rules, you have a chance to feel like you have a plan. And it says, does this amends implicate others? And of course it can, especially financial amends, or if you have shared bank accounts. Do I secure the consent? Maybe I have to discuss this with a wife or someone else that was there that maybe doesn't want to admit to this harm. You could talk to your sponsor or get the other person's consent. Have I consulted others? Did I pray for strength or mindfulness or meditate? So at no point are you making amends, especially big ones, without this at least discussing your plan with another person, hopefully in recovery. We keep a strict rule not to discuss that person's faults at any time. This could be difficult if you feel you owe amends to someone who's caused you trauma. I would come up with a really distinct plan and maybe have the help of a licensed therapist, because you could be causing yourself or that person harm, or they could get complex. So you might want some more help there. The amends is about correction. It's not about us feeling good. That is a result, and we'll see that. Maybe we could read the promises later, because this is where the promises apply. If we're painstaking about this phase of our development, that's really specific. It's almost taken out of context at meetings. The phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. What we're halfway through in context of the book is our amends list. So at no point are they, this is where we expect to receive them, because this could be difficult, but they get easier. And, you get more courage, and you've made a couple friends by this time that probably have experience making amends that will be similar to yours. They remind us that sobriety is not enough. We want to be awake. We want our conscious life back. We want to be present. And you can't be present when memories you have are just extremely painful or make you cringe. We have the guts to clean this up now. So that's kind of the advice in a nutshell, to open it up to the idea of a discussion. And that advice is kind of universal. Your amends could get complex. And I think Joe has a lot of experience with this, seeing it, helping people, and doing it himself. Let's hear a really quiet applause through video chat for Joe Kane.
I was thinking about this when you were talking, Joe, and it's interesting, like, the simplicity but the brilliance behind the 12-step philosophy. And when you're looking at the fourth step, right, you're talking about your resentments, right? And I often ask patients, what do you think is more important to work through? The hurts that the perceived hurts, or the hurts you've caused, and what do you think is more important to work through first? And I think it's so brilliant that the 12-step philosophy goes to the first to deal with the perceived hurts, because these are the same things that impact relationships. And when you think about the whole philosophy of recovery, it's all about relationship, and I think these perceived hurts kind of damage the ability to trust another human. And that's what you're really trying to do in the basis of early sobriety, is learn how to trust another person. And then when you get into the eighth step, it's more about like, okay, now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to deal with the hurts that I've caused. And I think this is where, the language in the literature is, we have to do this fearlessly. One of the things it says is we can't shrink. And that's our basic default setting, is when fear enters my life, I recoil from it, and I try to take control of whatever I can to make myself feel comfortable. So they're telling you pretty much in the eighth and ninth steps that, like, it's going to be difficult, but it's not undoable. And it's not undoable when you have all this framework that you've already done up until this point. Where I've seen people go wrong is, they get clean, they get sober, and then they wanna jump right into the eighth and ninth step, right? I'm gonna go tell everybody, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry for the things that I've done. And the fact is that a lot of the times they're not ready or willing or able to deal with the emotional upheaval that causes, whether it be themselves or somebody else.
Or they think they're going to feel good as a
Yeah, yeah,
result of it.
and that's I've had so many patients, or people that I've even worked with in the program, that it's the amend isn't about the other person. It's about, I can't deal with the way it's making me feel. And that's not what we're doing this for. It's
Mhm.
not. It's when I first went through the step, the gentleman that took me through it, and the same guy that took you, he said, "What does amend mean?" And I was like, to say you're sorry, to right your wrong, like, right your wrong. And he's like, "Well, what are the amendments to the Constitution?" I said, "Changes." And he goes, "That's what amend means. Amend means to change. To change some of the things that you've done, and to actually bring about some type of positive solution." And if you've done a thorough fourth step, you should be able to kind of encapsulate what you need to write, and the things that have prevented you from living your life as a free person, not compromised by the emotional upswing and downswing that recovery brings, especially early sobriety. And I think a lot of the time, this is like one of those steps where, when people initially see them that have no experience in recovery, like the fourth and the fifth and the eighth and the ninth, they're like, oh, the dreaded fourth and fifth and eighth and ninth, and I don't think that's what it's about. I don't think that's what it's about at all. Um, I don't think people drink over the fourth step. I don't think people drink over the eighth and ninth step. I've seen a lot of people stay sober on the first. They're miserable. Um, they're not the person that you really are attracted to, in terms of recovery.
Take that cotton out of your ears. Take
I
the
thought if somebody said that to me early on, I probably would have ended up hanging in a closet. The truth. Could you see like Bill W. or Dr. Bob throwing $20 at somebody and telling them go get drunk?
No.
It's not and I think that's like, that's the connotation some of these things have taken on, and the spin that's been created as a result of that. And I don't think that's what recovery is about at all. You know, but the idea of these amends, first I have to be willing. And that's the prayer of the eighth step is I ask God, or I ask the group as a whole, I ask whatever my concept of a higher power is, I ask for the willingness to be able to pursue these things. And modern science up until this point has not made a pill for willingness. um, and I don't think that that's going to ever be the case. So I have to as a person that has committed, because that's really what that's the third step is like, I'm making a commitment. What am I making a commitment to do? I'm making a commitment to follow through. I'm making a commitment to follow through with the rest of this process. um, and through that process, I understand more about self, and I understand more about the world and the people in it. um, and I've seen that in a clinical setting, and I've seen that in a setting outside of a, like, in the rooms, is that the people that I am even personally attracted to are usually the people that have done the most amount of work on themselves. And that's what they carry, and that's how they carry the message. um, but my personal experience with the eighth step was, in looking at the fourth step, it was so much of my behavior was rooted in fear. And through that fear, I acted out in ways that would be probably considered by some as not right, not right acting.
Yeah.
It
Would
wasn't.
would you call that fear anxiety, Joe? Too? At
Yeah,
the
I think
time?
I think there's so many ways we flower up
Yeah.
fear, with different verbiage and vernacular, and it's anxiety. And when you look at it, like, even on a clinical basis, when somebody's anxiety goes up, they're more likely to become emotional, and when they're more likely to become emotional, they're more likely to act out. Because what am I doing? And especially as an alcoholic and a drug addict, I'm constantly searching for comfort. Even my addiction in and of itself, was rooted in, I want to feel better. I want to feel better. Um, and I think this is the thing. It's like, this is the road path to feeling better, but it's even the language that they use. They don't say, I'm going to hop and skip and jump down this road to freedom. They say, I'm going to trudge it.
Tragic.
So
Yeah.
they're telling you, like, this, it's
Trench
not.
warfare.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy venture, but it's going to be worth it. That's the guarantee. Is the payoff is going to be worth it. So when I started to compile this list of amends, there wasn't too many financial ones. I wasn't the guy. I always considered myself to. I know it sounds weird, but I was like this. I felt like a moral junkie,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Stayed sick a lot. Curled up in the fetal position. Can't get out of the bed. That type of deal. Same with alcohol. I was more of oh my god, I can't get up. Um, but the amends that I really had to make were a lot of relationship amends, and some employers. I had to go back to some employers, and make some amends, because the one thing that was always common in my life was people always took a chance on me. People always saw something that I probably didn't see in myself, and they would give me these opportunities, and I would bury them, like, bury them.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to make, like, a lot of familial amends, a lot of those types of amends that I had to become willing to make. Um, and when I started to compile this list, I did exactly what you said, and I did this with the fourth step as well. Is I started with the easier ones, right, and then I worked my way up the list.
Me too. Yeah.
And that was the specific instruction that was given to me, is like, sometimes you got to give yourself a win,
Yeah.
just to get the ball rolling, and get some type of traction underneath you. um, but the truth and reality of it is there's going to be some that could potentially not be, or not be the outcome that you would necessarily want.
Yeah, my second amends sued me.
Yeah, like, you know, it could very, very well be a possibility.
I had some good friends around me.
That's right. And that's the thing. That's the thing about recovery is like even when you're talking about like traumatic experiences or whatnot, like I don't think the eighth and ninth step is this this unsurmountable task. But if you're gonna walk across a high wire and you've never done it before, then you better have a net. And that's the fellowship. The fellowship is the net. If you don't have good people around you and good support, number one, you're probably going to be less inclined to actually do it or follow through with it, as well as no level of accountability. And number two, if you do, then you want those people around you that are holding you accountable and holding you responsible to be able to help you when things can potentially go awry. And I've seen that. I've had that happen. um, and it's not something that's necessarily an enjoyable experience. But you know what? I attempted to right the wrong. I cleaned up my side of the street. Whether the other person accepts what I have done or they don't is their stuff. And I spent too much of my life making other people's stuff my stuff. And that's what came out of the fourth step as well. So what do I want to do? I want to start to deal with these things. I want to start to be
You
able
want to be autonomous too.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's so funny because when you talk to people that are first newly sober, one of the biggest things that they say is like, I want this independence. But I think the trick in recovery is like independence comes as a result of forming positive relationships with others.
Yeah.
It really does. And we're communal beings. Human beings, we're communal. We have this need to belong. We have this need to fit in. We have this need to be attached to something outside of ourselves. One of the funniest amends that I made is when I was drinking. Um, Early on, when I was like 17, I stole my brother's identity. Yeah, I did. I went up to the DMV. I pretended to be him. It's way past the statute of limitations, so I could talk about this
Sure.
freely now. But I pretended to be him. They made a duplicate ID with his picture on it, and at 17 years old, I was at the beer distributor, buying booze and buying liquor and doing all this craziness. And he
You
didn't.
involved the state. You involved the Commonwealth now.
You're right. I did. I'll never forget. I walked into a liquor store one time, and I had 2 handles of vodka, and I was like 18 years old, and I saw my friend's brother. He worked at the state store, and he goes, "Joe, you're not 18." And I was like, "You're right. I'll see it." And I walked right out the door. But I was constantly putting not only myself in bad positions, but I was putting everyone around me in bad positions too.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't, if you remember Bruce doing this, Bruce passed, and, I was at the end of my, like a nightmarish relapse. And Eric, I didn't know, a gentleman that helped me through the steps. He pointed something out I distinctly didn't do the first time because it wasn't that complex. I'd write a resentment, and then you ask yourself all these questions. I'm looking at it a different way. And one of those questions is, who else was harmed by this resentment? And he had me write those names on the side. And if it was a real resentment, a big one, an adult one, finances were involved, hearts were broken, bitter rivalries.
Oh, yeah.
There were 6 to 8 people to one amends that I owed an amends to because I involved them in this disgrace. That was the way I would treat my relationships.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you don't realize, when you're in it, when you're in the throes of addiction, you don't realize these things. And like, you have to bring that into consciousness. You have to really take a hard conscious look at self. And
Yeah.
the thing about recovery is like I forgot a lot of things, or I compartmentalized them, or whatever I did to not be able to deal with it at the time. And these things crop up no matter how long you're sober.
Yeah.
you're constantly reminded of these things. And I have to have that willingness, whether it's in the first year of sobriety or 10 years down the road or 20
Yeah.
years down the road. Is that I have to consistently approach life with some monicum of willingness to be able to make things okay.
Do you find you're
I
helping?
made the amends to my brother.
Yeah.
The point of the story was I ended up making the amends to my brother, and we joke about it today. It's a comical story, but at the time, look at the harm I could have caused his life as a result of my own selfishness and my own insanity. Thank God I never did.
I
You were going to
find,
ask me a question.
yeah, we're gonna open it up to questions in 1 minute. I think the big one for most people, especially in our culture, myself, is speaking to debt. You get these emotional relationships, you get a little momentum, you can repair them. People who see value in you in the relationship. But I think for a lot of people, debt could carry a lot, especially on their self-esteem. And the ninth step is there's a lot of good advice in there that we could be willing to have a plan, even though it might not be accomplished or it could take time. We could start to feel dignity and not identified with our debt, knowing we're willing to move forward, paying and keeping an honest way of life about us. I think that's a one that's complex to navigate for a lot of people in the first 2 to 3 years of recovery. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if there's like ramifications of even being able to bring awareness to like what debt you may have caused.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's known. We do some really sneaky, grimy stuff in our addictions. And, some people are unaware that it was even us. They might have an inkling, they might have no
Yeah.
idea whatsoever. And I think that's where the fear crops in of like, but think about that. Think about if you're that person and, you went through somebody breaking in your house, or your trust has been compromised now for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Your
Like
security.
yeah, that's the harm, that you go to bed and
Yeah.
you have to live with that idea of somebody violated
Yeah.
me and my life. And I think that's what you have to do when you're approaching these things is I don't want anybody to feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to have to carry that the way I carried my stuff, because it'll kill you. That stuff that'll destroy you from the inside out. That's what
Yeah.
kills alcoholics is we carry this crap around.
Well, Joe, we're going to open up for some engagement here, and on deck is our man, Akiva Stern. Akiva, Joe, and Joe. I think he's referencing us. What does one do in terms of amends for a wrong that involves someone with whom re-engaging can be detrimental to oneself? Joe, you have a lot of experience answering that, years of being clinical.
Well, I think most of the time when I see this, the first thing I think about is intimate relationships.
Yeah.
Right? Intimate relationships. And it's very difficult. And this is, I think, where you have to sometimes even involve somebody that might have a professional background, because just because the alcoholic and addict is sick doesn't mean that other people in the world aren't as well. And as a result of maybe making some of those amends, you might involve chaos and insanity back into your life. Especially if there's some issues that are pretty significant in the other person's life. I think there's other ways to go about that. Especially if it's really really toxic, very very toxic, and you're worried about whether it be your emotional or even physical safety.
Yeah.
There's other ways to do that. There's ways to write out amends, which shows willingness. There's ways to be able to talk to somebody that's professional to be able to get rid of some of the shame and guilt that might be attached with that. But I think the biggest thing with that is to be able to discuss it with another person before you actually follow through with the action. Here's my fears attached to this. Are they
Yeah.
are they rational? Are they irrational? What are the repercussions that this decision may have on my life? What may it have on other people that are currently involved in my life that are healthy? And if those things, if the cost outweighs the benefit, then you have to make an informed decision. And I think there's enough people that have gone through experiences like that you'll probably get some solid feedback and come up to like a pretty solid solution.
Yeah. And it can't be amends if your safety is in jeopardy or someone else's, or if they're harmed. Bruce would always give me an example like, hey, I always thought you're a real jerk. I owe you an amends. He's like, that's not an amends. That's an attack.
Yeah. And he was always big on saying, you do not put the word but in an amendment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do not say the word but, because if you do, then you should not even bother opening your mouth. That's not what it's about. It's about your stuff. It's not about the stuff that follows but. And I think that's hard when you're in it, when you're in an amends and you feel attacked, especially an alcoholic. Our normal reaction is to defend, because I've had
Go
to do,
time.
yeah,
It's
I've had
go
to do
time.
that my entire life. What was I defending? My alcoholism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't do that. You have to be you got to know what the mission is.
So at this time, you're making amends. You should be practicing. We're not at step 10 yet, but we introduced it, Joe. In step 3, hey, try this every night. That's how my sponsor did it. Can you read page 86 every night? So you have these things cognitively going through your head a day, night, and they really mean it. Practice it because it's prepping you. You might have an amends that's going to go sideways.
Yeah.
And it's not about your ego, your pride. My motivation to get sober this time was just to stay alive long enough to make the rights. I caused some harm, and it wasn't about me feeling good. I didn't want to go out with a deficit on my moral ledger. I thought I was getting my ticket punched. I can't go out like this. I got to clean this up.
You can't leave this legacy behind.
No, man. We got a great question from Louisiana, Ashley Duncan. Can you speak on amends for people that have passed away, living amends?
I actually have experiences with this one. My uncle owned a pharmacy, and my cousin is in recovery. My cousin has been in AA for a long time. And when I needed help the first time, my uncle moved some mountains to get me into a treatment facility. And I didn't stay sober. That time. And then he got really sick, and he was in hospice. And then he ended up passing away, and I was at the funeral, and I was out of my mind, and I was in embarrassment. And what was crazy about the situation is a year, almost to the day after that, my cousin got sick. She had terminal cancer, and that was his daughter. And I was sober at the time, and I was going through the steps, and she was in the same hospice room as him. And I visited her. I told her how much we meant in terms of my life. I got to be with her. I got to, say my goodbyes. I think those are the living amends. Is, you don't let that happen again. You don't do these. That's the change that amend is talking about. Is that to me was right and the wrong.
Yeah.
Was being there, following that specific. A lot of people will do like phantom letters. They'll write something out. They might visit the gravesite, those types of things. They might talk to extended family members. But I think a lot of it is just, doing the right thing and living the right way.
Yeah, it is.
And when situations like that crop up, you're available and there.
I just want to speak to one point, Ashley. Joe, I've done living amends. My father passed away in August, and I didn't see him for a year. It was COVID. I couldn't go into the nursing home, and there was a lot of morbidity around me. My sister just died, passed away as I was trying to get sober. And I had a really, rocky relationship with my dad. And I was having a daughter, was born 2 months after my dad passed away. And that month I just put my dog down. So I'm out of it. Sober, but I was starting a daily meditation, and I came across like an exercise that's called a metta. And I had some really sore resentments against my father that I did not want carried on into me being a parent. My daughter's on the way. So I do this meditation, and it guided me to the idea of thinking of my father as a 5-year-old. Can I hold that same grudge and resentments against a 5-year-old boy? The father I didn't know before I was born. So living amends expands beyond my own life, my own point of view. This involves imagination, creativity, and stoicism. And these are tools in step 11. I can't. My dad's a victim of trauma. So I became a victim of a continual trauma. That could stop. That stopped, and it involved me reading books that just gave me anxiety about parenthood, but I did it. Because I don't know what I'm doing. But the chain's broken. And the humility came into me that I saw my dad as someone that needed, he needed compassion and more love. And it broke the ice of that. That was my amends. And he was passed. So I could understand having to be in those positions to do that. Marlene's in the house. Here we got an I don't want to skip one. These are popping all over. Okay. I'm going to try to go in order, guys. Chris, how do I make amends to someone that I don't talk to anymore? What is the best way to go about this?
I don't know. Like, there's so many different routes of communication these days. I think I think the best way to do it is the best way to absolutely do an amends is in person.
Or Venmo.
Yeah, or Venmo. Yeah. Right. I think in person, because you can't gauge affect through a text message, and so much, like, if you think about cognitive distortions, especially catastrophic thinking, one of the major ways that catastrophic thinking occurs is through ambiguity. And ambiguity is so prominent in terms of like social media and texting. And if I texted Joe and said we need to talk, Joe's going to be like, what did I do?
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? And I think it's all about the language that you use. If you're gonna reach out that way, you got to be very, I would say, specific. And I think it's throwing out that rope. But I really think the best way to do any type of amends is in person, because there is some semblance of the ability to gauge and control, like, not control, but understand where the person is, and also for them to gauge your affect, where your level of sincerity is, because we pick up on things like that. But I think that's the best way to do it, is just try to track the person down, and see if there's an opportunity to be able to discuss it with them. And I think if you have to go the route of like reaching out, is to give some basic understanding of what the purpose is of why you're reaching out. Is like, I'm reaching out to you because I need to discuss some things with you that I've done in the past that I think have caused some harm in your life, and I wanted to see what I could do to maybe right the wrongs in terms of our relationship. That's not leading with the chin. As they say, you don't want to lead with the chin when you're making an amends. You want to be able for people to understand what the purpose is of what you're doing, and that you're on this quest for I don't know what you would call enlightenment, spiritual growth.
Yeah. Some of them even give you scripts. You're on a life and death errand.
Yeah. People have done that too. Is like, in order for me, some people will say, give you a script of like, in order for me to overcome my alcoholism, I want to discuss some things with you in order for me to progress in terms of my recovery and right the wrongs that I've harmed you in the past. Lots of different literature on that too. There's lots of different opinions. I think it's like anything else. You got to find what's comfortable. You got to find what you're willing to do. And then you got to make a decision whether to do it. I would see like a question like that too. I read into stuff. So I'm like, well, like give me more information so I can better assess the situation. But that's what I think the importance of like people in long-term recovery is for too, is, sometimes people will help you to dig at, what's preventing you from doing this. I don't think it's more along the lines of how do I, it's more along the lines of what's preventing me from wanting to do it.
Thanks for the question, Chris. We got a question from Scott. Joe, I've had a hard time reconnecting with my sister. She doesn't see me the same. What do I do? Please help.
These are the tough ones, because, family's a very, it's a precarious situation. Sometimes I think this is another one. If you're finding it difficult to be able to do this, sometimes professional help works. Sometimes somebody to buffer that, especially depending on what the damage is. The beauty about working with the therapist is that sometimes if a therapist, you sign a release of information that gives the therapist the ability to reach out, and sometimes a therapist just reaching out and saying, like I'm working with your brother, and some things have come up, and I'm wondering if you would want to be involved in some of the treatment of him, because he would appreciate it if you were involved. Sometimes that buffer opens the door, at least cracks it, and even if it doesn't, the therapist is able to work with you through it. And then the other thing is reconnecting. I think sometimes it's more about meeting people where they're at, letting them talk about what's transpired, giving them an open avenue.
Yeah.
But the problem is I gotta be prepared and willing to hear that.
Yeah.
And I can't use it as an excuse to drink or drug, like regardless of what I hear, and regardless of what the other person says, I have to be able to listen, and listen with an open head and an open heart.
My sponsor, it's kind of common around here, if you would understand it, I had a list of amends that were my resentments and some harms. Here's the easy ones. I could do them tomorrow. Here's the kind of, hard ones. I'm going to do them, but they're going to be they could be uncomfortable thinking about them. And here's the ones, oh my God, never. How am I going to do this? And when I got to my first hard one, I pitched my sponsor on some amends. He's like, these aren't amends. These are ways to make you feel good. Because I knew I knew what amends to offer him. He could accept this. He said, I think with this one, Joe, you're going to have to ask him, what can I do to make amends? Why don't you let him decide? And it was like, well, this is what I wanted to do. And with a little coaching and a massage from my sponsor, I realized when I make amends by myself, I don't even know it, that I could be trying to wiggle out just to get this feel good out of the guilt. Sometimes I got to let people talk. They might have a different idea about the amends, and I got to be open to it.
And like later on, when you get into like working with others, it tells you like, family or no family. We've seen people fail whose families never came back. We've seen people succeed whose families haven't come back. We've seen people fail whose families never came back for whatever reason. It's not contingent on that. But, I was thinking, and I think about Bruce a lot, I do. And, there was a guy who, he was estranged from his kids, and 40 years sober. And you know what? When he passed, he wasn't alone.
No.
You know what I mean?
He had a family of 10,000 people.
He did. And like, that's, to me, that's the testament of recovery, and that's the testament of the fellowship, is that, in those rough spots, whether a family member doesn't reconnect with you or they do, you can get all the needs that you have as a human being met by
Yeah.
doing simple things.
Your dignity's returning.
Yeah, that's it.
No one can take that from you. You can only offer it to people. I mean, it's yours.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Scott. Coley. How do you make amends to someone that they don't even know you have done something to them? So they're not aware of the harm. Joe, you want to tackle that?
I mean, you got to look at those questions that were posed earlier in terms of the reason we're making amends. Is it gonna harm me? Is it gonna harm others? Um, Not so much if it's gonna harm me, but is it gonna harm the
Yeah,
people around me? Do I need to have consent? Does this involve other people? Um, what are the implications that this amends is gonna have? Um, but you earlier in the process, we stated that we're willing to go to any length, and this is kind of like one of those loaded questions, because it's I don't know what the particular set of circumstances are, but I think more importantly is you got to ask yourself those questions before you proceed.
yeah,
And that's the reason that you have people in recovery that can guide and assist you, because they probably have their own experience with it as well.
great question, Coley. Hopefully, you have a sponsor, and if you've been guided through the first 7 steps, you wouldn't be making a plan by yourself, essentially. And every amends is possible. It just might not be what you think it is once you start talking to another human being about what you want to do. Great question. Coffee time. Sounds like we might need to get a cup of coffee, Joe.
Which Joe, because
I'll drink coffee and tea with Akiva any day. He's one of my heroes. Hi, Lisa. Lisa, one of the amends that really needs to be made is with my husband. We really haven't said much one way or the other since I came home from Avenues about my drinking. We're finally getting along. Should I bring it up or let it lay?
what are you thinking, Joe? Because I don't know if we're
I'm
on the
thinking,
same.
you know, you move back, and the first amends I made, the first list, who do I see every day? Now, if I owe bank money, but I owe one of my best friends money who bailed me out, I wanted to take care of the relationships of the people I know I was hurting directly, just to give some context of the priority. The amends to your husband, if you don't want to bring it up, things are just laying around. That's fine. But going through the formal process of the steps means you're going to write these resentments down and you're going to come to your husband. Because if you haven't written down a resentment about him and did a 4th step and viewed this relationship under that lens of asking these questions to examine that, you really aren't, what you're considering is not an amends in the sense that we share in the steps. You're living with your husband, and you might not want to ruffle feathers. But until you write down distinctly what that relationship is with your addiction and your husband, what's real, what isn't, what have the years been, how can I make a real amends? It's not an amends. That's an apology. You could put daily fires out every day. You don't have to put out 30 years of fires just because you decide to. Go through the process with your sponsor to write that down. Take it through a 6 and 7 step. Consider it for an hour and then come up with a formal amends. And it might not be a discussion. It might be a trip, a consideration, you know, but you can't really come up with a plan until you go through the process of the first 8 steps. It brings a new state of consciousness to our relationships and a consideration Joe was speaking to, things I couldn't think of until I did this formally through the first 8 steps.
Yeah, I think and I mean, I think that's an open-ended conversation that you could have too, is like, if you think it's pertinent to explain, like, hey, listen, I have a lot of things to fix in terms of this relationship, But you know what? Right now. I'm just trying to not drink, and I'm trying to understand the things that have gone on and occurred. And I want to get to the point where we could sit down, and I can really start to change some of the things in my life that have impacted you the way that they have. Um, I'm not there yet, but I would like you to be patient and tolerant with me until I am. Um, that's I think that's like the open-ended conversation that anybody should have in terms of like a family member, because you're not there when you're drinking, and then you come home and you're doing all this stuff to stay well. Um, but I think that they I don't know if they're entitled or deserve, but I think they need that open communication.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They need that open communication. Like, you know what? I'm not at this point, but there is a lot that I have to fix, and I just need to become more aware of it. And I'm asking you to be patient with me. You know, because even that, like, you don't have those types of conversations when you're drinking and in a relationship. They're not even used to that. Like, where's this coming from? Like, what's up with that?
Guys, if there's any other too detailed questions, or you were uncomfortable asking a question in this forum, my email's always in the chat for avenues or alumni who need guidance through the steps, or you have questions about your recovery community. I usually get back to them in the week. Always feel free to do that. Joe, Akiva wants to get coffee.
Hey, I'm always up.
Are we getting coffee with Akiva or what?
I'm always up for a coffee. It's in that. I think that's next week. We're getting coffee.
I like Ashley's comment. Yes, breaking generational curses. It is. Addiction's generational. It's genetic, it's social, it's environment. And once there's an awareness, we could speak to it. I mean, I hope we don't have, like, I wouldn't want my family to live with that curse once you become aware of it. It's how we treat each other.
Yeah. There's a lot of recent studies that show that, like, understanding the origins of family and having open dialogue about the stuff that we're talking about now actually benefits a child's overall well-being throughout lifespan development. So it's like, we have to have these types of engagements and conversations because it's that taboo topic. It's that taboo, like, oh, we don't talk about Uncle Joe. Like,
I don't. I'm crazy, Uncle Joe.
Well, me too. We buried that story a long time ago. We're not going to let it see the light of day. No, you have to. That's what this is about. It's about, I'm not that person anymore.
Scott, I don't know if you were from Lake Ariel or Bucks. If you want to email one of us, maybe we could help you find some resources and a good contact in your area. Contact Megan, me, or Bucks. Please email us, and maybe by tomorrow we could see where you're at. See if we know anyone in that area that could be a real good resource or contact for you.
Yeah.
Where are you located? Let's see if we can get you. Hey, Ashley, she's awesome. I've never met her yet, but that's great. Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. Megan, I completely agree with what Joe Van Wee said. Joe Van Wee is always right. He's just so. Oh wait. Those buffers helped significantly when I wasn't necessarily ready for my family members to make amends. What also helped is time to be able to trust that it was genuine, that and that we're actually making change. It may take longer than you want, but be patient. Meg, that's great. It's great to hear that perspective and understand. My sponsor didn't want me making amends until I understood what regret was, in the sense that it wasn't morbid. And I was like 6 months sober. Joe, something really magnificent happened in my life. And an hour later, I was crying behind my garage. And I'm not a sentimental man. I was washed with a regret I never felt. And it was sincere, of the amends I had to make, because it was distracting. My 9th step wasn't finished. My sponsor said, that's what you have to do, or you're not going to enjoy your life. You're going to feel you don't deserve it. And I really like that comment, Meg. Thanks.
No, we cannot. We cannot do that. No, I refuse.
Emily, one of the things I've learned, everything we do is in reaction to or emulation of. Choose those reactions. Ashley, yes. Break generational curses. Thank you, Emily. Devin. Devin, spoken like a true professional. Joe Van Wee is really something. Who is? Thanks,
You know,
Devin.
you look so much better on camera than I do. I'm all fuzzy. Like, what did you? I just want to know what you did there.
Akiva has me tan for 20 minutes, and then he has me go behind Lake Ariel at the tree line, do some jumping jacks.
Yeah, I bet he does.
White out on my teeth. And then
Let's get your blood pressure
reel
up.
me in, and the lights on. Guys, we're at the hour, and I think we've gotten to most questions. Again, if you feel you wanted to ask something and you're not comfortable asking, or you forgot, or you remember something during the week, like Scott, please reach out to Ashley, Megan, any one of us, and we'll see if we can get you connected with a new resources in your area. Always reach out, and we'll get to you within the week. I will. Any big book questions, NA, please feel free to always reach out to me. Guys, next week will be exciting. Maybe we'll have another mystery guest, and we'll be doing steps 10 and 11. 10 and 11. Joe, I want to thank you for coming out.
It was great. I enjoyed myself thoroughly.
I want to thank you for steering me and encouraging me when I began my journey of working at Avenues. It was probably the best decision of my life. It really transformed what I want to do.
Hey, it's great. It's amazing to see the happiness and joy. Because I knew Joe when Joe was like cynical. That's why I think we both got along so well with Bruce.
Yeah, he did a welfare check here once.
Yeah, it's miraculous, the turnaround.
That's because I know guys that were in recovery that were doing it. I knew it was possible. I hope everyone, you enjoyed tonight, and it was a resource. It's great.
Joe, are we still on?